And Ken and WBT.
Huh? It's 5:05 and welcome into a Monday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. Thanks for spending some time with us. We are tracking continued fallout from last week's CNN story. This was about Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson and surrounded lewd comments online from the Lieutenant Governor dating back to 2009. On Sunday night, the Robinson campaign released a statement that multiple high-ranking members of the team have in fact resigned. They included the campaign manager, a deputy campaign manager, the finance director, and a campaign senior advisor. In a written statement, Mark Robinson said, quote, "I appreciate the efforts of these team members who have made the difficult choice to step away from the campaign, and I wish them well in their future endeavors." The lieutenant governor continued in his statement saying, quote, "My campaign will continue to focus on the substantive issues at stake in this election. Building an economy that grows from Murphy to Manteo, cutting taxes and eliminating unnecessary red tape, removing politics out of our classrooms, and cracking down on violent crime and dangerous drugs." Back to the CNN story from last week, the lieutenant governor was asked point blank by CNN about rumors that multiple campaign staffers were resigning. This is what the lieutenant governor had to say.
There have been rumors that some of your campaign staff have quit. Can you tell us if that's true or not?
Absolutely not, and we are not getting out of this race.
Well, the lieutenant governor says that was not true, and as we found out just a couple of days later, that in fact is the case. We'll continue to track that here throughout the morning. Democrat Governor Roy Cooper has vetoed House Bill 10. The multifaceted bill fully funds the Opportunity Scholarship Program across the state. It requires sheriffs to cooperate with ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and included adjustments to budget proposals. Governor Roy Cooper on the veto.
We're here today because we know that private school vouchers are the biggest threat to public schools in decades. Today, I have just vetoed House Bill 10. That veto can be upheld if enough legislators in both parties tell Republican leaders that they don't want to vote on a veto override this year.
More than 55,000 students are currently on the wait list for the Opportunity Scholarship Program. We'll have more details on this House Bill 10 veto, including some more comments from Governor Roy Cooper coming up for you in less than 15 minutes. It's now 5:07 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Continuing to follow news over the weekend about North Carolina's governor race, we'll turn our attention this morning to the North Carolina General Assembly. Joining us is the Carolina Journal's Brianna Kramer. Brianna, depending on how this election shakes out, it might not even matter who the governor is if Republicans can continue with the supermajority in the General Assembly. What are we looking at with that?
Yeah, that's right. So the Republicans have had the supermajority for the past 2 years in the General Assembly, which has allowed them to override a lot of bills, when Governor Roy Cooper has vetoed them, similar to what actually happened on Friday with HB 10. He's now vetoed that. And so the General Assembly will be able to override that. And so when you have a supermajority, which is 3/5 of each chamber, you're able to override. And so, even though it looks like this governor race may be leaning towards the Democrat candidate, we could still maintain the majority Republican in the legislature. So we were just looking at data, seeing where things are at in the races, and it looks like it's going to be tight. The Senate remains in a safer position than the House. The House is holding on by a thread, and so it kind of is still up in the air. It's not assured, but it is an easier path than they had in 2022. So
is it similar to kind of what goes on up in Washington, D.C.? If they have a supermajority in the Senate, does that allow them to do full overrides, or do they need that supermajority in both the House and the Senate to really nullify anything that the governor may or may not want to do?
Yeah, so we need both chambers, the House and the Senate. So if the Senate gets their supermajority, that's not going to be too beneficial if the House isn't the same. So what actually happened in 2022, if we kind of go back and look a little bit, they won big. Republicans did. They picked up some Democrat-leaning Senate seats. They picked up 7 Democrat-leaning House seats, and then they even won every toss-up seat in both chambers. So they were able to get the supermajority in the Senate, but the House, they actually were one away still. And then if you recall, Representative Tricia Cotham, she shook things up in the House and she changed parties. So she went from Democrat to a Republican, which enabled them to also have the supermajority. So that's how they were able to, this past session, continue to override.
Without that super majority, if Republicans were unable to secure that, it sounds like from your reporting, the House would be the more likely chamber where that's a possibility. Then you get into the situation where, Brianna, you have to work with folks across the aisle to maybe try and get some of these veto overrides or some of this legislation, even through, have to a little bit of give and take to get some of this stuff done with the Democrat Party.
Yes, it would be a lot more give and take. And maybe less productivity even, because right now they're kind of Republicans are able to do exactly what they want. They know that it is going to be vetoed, and then they still don't care and move forward with overriding that veto. So it would be a lot more give and take. On the House side, we're looking at some key districts that they're going to need to pick up. Republicans have to defend Democrat-leaning seats now, so such as districts 24 and 25, areas right around Raleigh, and down in Charlotte as well. There's one district in the Charlotte area, District 103 and 104 actually, are both just slightly lean Democratic seats. So those are ones to continue to watch on the House side. And then the Senate side, there's districts 11, 13, and 18. And then District 42, which is right outside Charlotte. Those are some key suburban districts that we're going to keep a close eye on as we head into the November election.
So as we continue to follow this, as we get closer to that election date, what are you seeing, at least in polling? Does it look like that the possibility is strong for Republicans to hold on to the supermajority? And from the Democrat side, Brown, it's not like we're talking about them taking power. They're just trying to simply hold off that 3/5 majority, a very different race that Democrats are running compared to the Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I was able to talk to Andy Jackson. He's the director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity at the John Locke Foundation. And he did say that the path for Republicans supermajorities is a little easier and that they're going to be able to retain it if they can win at least 2 of the 5 toss-up districts on the Senate side. So we also have new Carolina Journal polling out, but that does show the margins tightening. Before, Republicans had a 2% advantage in polling, but the parties now stand tied at 46%. So things are narrowing in a little bit. And with this governor shakeup last week, it remains to be seen how that's going to affect polling data in the next month or so. And, what will come of that in terms of voters? Is this going to still draw out voters, not just for the governor race, but the presidential race, and then all of these House and Senate district races as well?
You can find a full list of these various districts, plus some maps and pictures to go along with it by checking out Brianna's story over at carolinajournal.com. It's 5:13 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. Time for a look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick.
affected.
The Brett Winterble Show.
This afternoon at 3.
News Talk 1110 and 99.3.
WBT.
5:20. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour, now streaming on the Carolina Journal YouTube channel, News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. During a rally in Wilmington this weekend, former President Donald Trump vowed to crack down on sanctuary cities.
Today, I'm announcing a new plan to end all sanctuary cities in North Carolina and all across our country. No more sanctuary cities.
He also spoke about key issues that are top of mind in this 2024 election cycle, from immigration to the economy. Former President Donald Trump hit on those major issues during his rally Saturday on the coast. Former President Trump promised of a plummet of household good prices, thousands of dollars in savings for American families, and said this: for energy costs to go down by 50% within 12 months of him in the Oval Office. He also appealed to the younger generation, noting they would finally be able to afford a house and a mortgage. Targeting taxes, Donald Trump proposed no tax on tips, no tax on overtime work, and no tax on Social Security benefits. Former President Trump said that senior citizens have been hurt under the Biden-Harris administration and that his goal was to rescue the middle class, make America powerful, safe, healthy, and free again. The state of North Carolina continues to be a top state for presidential hopefuls, and once again, vice presidential nominee Senator J.D. Vance will be back in the Tar Heel state again. He's got two events in Charlotte today. This evening at 5 p.m., he'll be at the Dale F. Halton Theater. That's on the campus of Central Piedmont Community College. Shortly after that, he will make his way to the Freedom House Church. That's near the I-85, I-485 interchange for an event at 6:30 p.m. Details for both of those events, if you would like to attend, are available at donaldjtrump.com. The most recent polling out from Carolina Journal last week shows a razor-thin race here in the state of North Carolina and many other swing states across the nation. And obviously, with the amount of activity that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, J.D. Vance was here last week. Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's VP pick, also in the state last week. North Carolina very much at play as we continue into this cycle. Well, yesterday marked 35 years since Hurricane Hugo made landfall along the coast of South Carolina. The powerful storm caused damage and destruction through both North and South Carolina as the storm made landfall around midnight, September the 22nd, 1989. The storm then traveled across the Palmetto State up towards the Charlotte area. Numerous trees were knocked down across the Queen City, and roughly 85% of home and businesses were without power, some of those without power for up to 6 weeks. The control tower at Charlotte Douglas's airport clocked 99 miles an hour, forcing personnel in the control tower to evacuate. High winds from Hurricane Hugo also severely damaged two of WBT's broadcasting towers. The FCC approved WBT to operate at 25,000 watts with a non-directional pattern for the next 2 years. While that damage was dealt with and new towers were rebuilt, Hurricane Hugo directly killed 67 people in its path and did an estimated $1 billion worth of damage just in the state of North Carolina. That's 35 years ago yesterday, Hurricane Hugo making landfall and leaving a swath of damage and destruction across both North and South Carolina. It's now 5:24 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Well, continuing our tracking of House Bill 10, we covered this in great detail last week on the Carolina Journal News Hour. This is a multifaceted bill. One of the biggest portions of it is that it fully funded the Opportunity Scholarship Program. That is the school voucher program that the General Assembly put into effect last year that allows every parent and every student in the state to choose whether they would like to go to a traditional public school or get some money from the state to attend a private school. The bill also requires sheriffs to cooperate with ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and included some other adjustments to the budget. Democrat Governor Roy Cooper vetoing that legislation on Friday. However, ahead of his actual veto, he spent a lot of time on Thursday at the legislative session of the 151st Annual North Carolina Press Association Convention. That's the NCPA, blasting the Opportunity Scholarship Program, insisting that it's going to hurt public schools. Governor Roy Cooper said at a press conference on Friday that the veto can be upheld. He noted at the conference that his children, although at least one of them had gone to a private school, and more than 84% of the state's students go to public schools. And as the pillars of a free press need to be safeguarded, so do public schools. This is what Governor Roy Cooper had to say on Friday with the veto override.
We're here today because we know that private school vouchers are the biggest threat to public schools in decades. Today, I have just vetoed House Bill 10. That veto can be upheld if enough legislators in both parties tell Republican leaders that they don't want to vote on a veto override this year.
Governor Cooper says that the legislation plans to spend about $4 billion on school vouchers over the next decade, and that rural schools would be hurt the most because there are fewer private schools in those areas. He also said that many people who criticize public schools haven't stepped foot into them and know little about them, adding that surveys show that parents are very satisfied with the public schools that their children attend. I'll note there are currently 55,000 students additional waiting on the Opportunity Scholarship Program list after the program was opened up last year to every resident in the state, prompting thousands upon thousands of families to apply. The CEO of the John Locke Foundation, Donald Bryson, said, quote, Governor Cooper has ranted about the alleged unaccountability for private schools during his tenure, but he didn't prevent him from sending his daughter to one of those schools. Not only are they accountable to the students, parents, and families that they serve, but state law shows that they're clearly accountable to the state, according to Bryson. He says under state law, private schools have to administer national tests and make those results available to state government representatives. What part of state government, said Bryson? The Department of Administration, which reports directly to Governor Roy Cooper. If he doesn't think they're accountable, it's because he isn't doing his job or he's unfamiliar with the state law, which is remarkable since he's been elected in office since 1986. Governor Roy Cooper, in his veto override on Friday, said, however, he is not against private schools.
I am not against private schools and parents choosing that option. It works for some children. But I am against taking taxpayer dollars out of the public schools and giving it to private school vouchers for the wealthiest North Carolinians, and that is exactly what House Bill 10 does.
House Bill 10 has now been vetoed by Democrat Governor Roy Cooper. The General Assembly, while still in a skeleton session, is expected back sometime next month. We will track that and see if they go forward with another veto override as Governor Roy Cooper ends his term. He's term limited out as governor here across the state of North Carolina. 5:28 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Time for another look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you.
WBT.com for details.
5:35. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good Monday morning to you. Well, it was a busy end of last week, and we are continuing to track fallout this morning from a CNN story that was published about lewd comments online from Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, those dating back to 2009. Well, we learned last night that the Robinson campaign, multiple high-ranking members of that team have resigned. They include the campaign manager, a deputy campaign manager, the finance director, and a campaign senior advisor. In a written statement, Mark Robinson said, quote, "I appreciate the efforts of these team members who have made the difficult choice to step away from the campaign, and I wish them well in their future endeavors." The lieutenant governor was asked point blank about this in a CNN interview that took place last week about reports of individuals in a mass exodus at his campaign. This is what he said then.
There have been rumors that some of your campaign staff have quit. Can you tell us if that's true or not?
Absolutely not, and we are not getting out of this race.
Well, it may have been true at the time, but as we learned last night, and as we're reporting this morning, multiple high-ranking members have resigned and now left his team. Also interesting to note, as former President Donald Trump was in the state of North Carolina over the weekend, he did not mention Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson in his comments in Wilmington on Saturday. During that rally, Donald Trump vowed to crack down on crimes committed by illegal immigrants in major U.S. cities, pledging to eliminate sanctuary cities if he secures another term in office. He covered top issues like immigration and the economy, hitting those major issues, those hot-button issues that are in this year's election cycle. Trump promised to lower the price of household goods, save American families thousands of dollars a year, and cut energy prices by up to 50% within 12 months of him being in office. He also noted that for younger individuals, they'll finally be able to afford a house and a mortgage. Former President Trump proposed no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security benefits. Trump said that senior citizens have been hit especially hard under the Biden-Harris administration, and that his goal was to rescue the middle class, make America powerful, healthy, safe, and free again. In Raleigh today, we are continuing to track voter ID legal battles. State and national Republican groups are now seeking refuge with the North Carolina Court of Appeals to block the use of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's digital identification cards as a valid voter ID in this upcoming fall's election. The Republican National Committee and the North Carolina Republican Party filed a petition seeking a temporary stay and a temporary injunction. They also seek an order called a writ of supersedence to block a ruling from last week. That was on Thursday when a Wake County Superior Court judge and Keith Gregory ruled against the GOP groups. He upheld the State Board of Elections' decision to allow UNC digital IDs to serve as a voter identification. You can read more about that story by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. It's 5:39 on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. We often hear it's time for the next generation to start leading us in politics. Well, that actually might be happening here in North Carolina. Joining us on the Carolina Journal News Hour this morning is Katie Zender to talk about maybe younger individuals that are leading us in the General Assembly. Katie, good morning. And we've got a lot of young folks representing us up in Raleigh.
Hi, yeah, good morning, Nick. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, so I've been able to talk with a few representatives and also a GA consultant about what's going on at the General Assembly. We do have a demographic that seems to be leaning younger. I was able to speak with Anna Marsh, she's a GA consultant, and then also sat down with Representative Alan Chesser. He's one of the youngest representatives on the House side. And then we have Senator Dave Craven, who's actually the youngest senator sitting right now. He's 33 years old, and he's on the Senate side. And then, in the primaries earlier this year, we had Wyatt Gable, who unseated Representative George Cleveland by 2%. And if he wins in the general election this fall, he will be the youngest lawmaker in North Carolina at just 21. He's a college student right now. Yeah, so definitely have a demographic that's leaning much younger. Representative Chesser said he expects to see a shift next year. Representative Chesser is still in his first term, but he said, we tend to see these shifts every about 10 to 12 years or so. So he is expecting that to come next year. And then I talked with Anna Marsh, and she said that one of the things that younger candidates are really good at is because they've grown up with tech, they're able to get their messages out to the voters much more quickly and cheaply because they don't have to hire these expensive firms to get their message out. She also said that older lawmakers tend to have a lot of energy, but they have a hard time competing against the resilience of younger lawmakers and the ambition of younger lawmakers.
One of the things that's probably important to note for our listeners this morning, we have a part-time legislature here in North Carolina. The salary for a member of the General Assembly is just $13,500 a year. Katie, it's going to be hard for anybody to live on that amount of money, and I think it's why you see maybe that there's not as many young people involved in it. You pretty much have to be independently wealthy or retired to make $13,500 a year and provide for your family, right?
Right, exactly. That's a huge part of it. That's something that both Anna Marsh and Representative Chesser pointed out. That is why we tend to see a lot of lawmakers that are on the older side. They're more established. They're either retired or they're much further along in their careers. These younger lawmakers, they still have families. They still have full-time jobs. They're, still taking their kids to, soccer practice, dance recitals, what have you, as well as, still trying to sustain their marriages somewhat. So they're almost leading two lives, working two jobs. So that is why we tend to see, it's much easier for the older lawmakers because they're well established, their lives are established. If they have kids, their kids are probably grown or at least mostly grown. So yeah, it is very difficult for younger lawmakers because they've got so much on their plates.
When, we take a look at the national ticket before Joe Biden dropped out, and one of the big criticisms in that, Katie, was you've got two 80-something-year-old guys here on the ballot, and we want younger people involved. Is there a bias, though, however? With age comes experience. Is there hesitation across the state of North Carolina to elect younger people? Is that bias still in place, or is maybe some of that evaporating away?
I think there is still somewhat, but I do think that we see a lot of it evaporating away. One of the biggest points that was brought up was, younger lawmakers bring a lot of diversity. This is something both Anna Marsh and Chesser talked a lot about, is really the importance of diversity in the General Assembly. Representative Chesser said, when you're only being challenged from the other side, then you kind of tend to just put up a wall and just kind of block it. But if you're being challenged from inside your own party, then that causes you to sit down and have discussions, which that in turn causes growth. One thing that I really liked that Representative Chesser pointed out, this is one of my favorite quotes from him, and you can find it in the article. He said, "Law is not made through social media posts. It's a slow and deliberate process." So kind of on the flip side of that, that is something that younger lawmakers can learn from the older generation. But then he also said, this is something that can be a disadvantage of older lawmakers is we tend to get stuck in tradition. We get stuck in preferences. That is something that is just human nature. We tend to get stuck in these human patterns and stuck in tradition. So that's an advantage of bringing in the younger lawmakers.
The story is titled, "Is the General Assembly Getting Younger?" You can read that. It's by our friend Katie Zinder over at CarolinaJournal.com. It's now 5:44 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Time for another look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. We have a
This afternoon at 3.
News Talk 1110 and 99.3.
WBT.
5:51. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour, streaming live on the Carolina Journal YouTube page. I'm Nick Craig. Good Monday morning to you. Democrat Governor Roy Cooper in the news late last week as he vetoed House Bill 10. Now, that's a multifaceted piece of legislation that fully funds the Opportunity Scholarship Program across the state, requires sheriffs to cooperate with ICE, that's Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and includes adjustments to various budget proposals across the state. The governor said this during a press conference on Friday.
We're here today because we know that private school vouchers are the biggest threat to public schools in decades. Today, I have just vetoed House Bill 10. That veto can be upheld if enough legislators in both parties tell Republican leaders that they don't want to vote on a veto override this year.
In continuing his comments about private schools, the governor says, however, he's not against them.
I am not against private schools and parents choosing that option. It works for some children. But I am against taking taxpayer dollars out of the public schools and giving it to private school vouchers for the wealthiest North Carolinians, and that is exactly what House Bill 10 does.
More than 55,000 students and their families are on the wait list for the Opportunity Scholarship Program in the state. The General Assembly currently operating under a skeleton session. They are expected to be back sometime next month, where you could see another veto override of this legislation. Continued fallout from last week after CNN published a story about lewd online comments from Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. We learned last night that several high-ranking members of the Robinson camp have resigned. They include a campaign senior advisor, the finance director, and multiple campaign managers. In a written statement, Mark Robinson said, quote, "I appreciate the efforts of these team members who have made the difficult choice to step away from my campaign, and I wish them well in their future endeavors." We will be tracking that story throughout the week over at carolinajournal.com. And yesterday marked 35 years since Hurricane Hugo made landfall along the coast of South Carolina. The powerful storm caused damage and destruction through North and South Carolina. Hugo made landfall around midnight on September the 22nd, 1989. The storm then traveled across the Palmetto State up towards the Charlotte area. Numerous trees were knocked down across the Queen City, and roughly 85% of home and businesses were without power, some of them for up to 6 weeks. The control tower at Charlotte Douglas's International Airport clocked a 99-mile-an-hour wind gust, forcing personnel in the airport control tower to evacuate, and high winds from Hugo severely damaged two of WBT's broadcasting towers. It would take nearly 2 years to get those rebuilt. Hugo directly killed 67 people in its path and did an estimated $1 billion worth of damage. It's now 5:54 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. The state of North Carolina continues to be its center of attention for presidential candidates, and during a rally in Wilmington this past weekend, former President Donald Trump vowed to crack down on crimes committed by illegal immigrants in major U.S. cities, pledging to eliminate what he calls sanctuary cities.
Today, I'm announcing a new plan to end all sanctuary cities in North Carolina and all across our country. No more sanctuary cities. As soon as I take office, we will immediately surge federal law enforcement to every city that is failing, which is a lot of them, to turn over criminal aliens, and we will hunt down, capture every single gang member, drug dealer, rapist, murderer, and migrant criminal that is being illegally harbored. Every one of the top 25 worst cities are Democrat-run cities.
The former president also touched on key issues like immigration and the economy. He pledged to significantly lower household good prices with promises of savings worth thousands of dollars for American families. He also pledged a 50% reduction in energy costs within a year of taking office. And in trying to appeal to younger voters, the former president vowed to make home ownership more affordable, stating that younger individuals would finally be able to afford a house and a mortgage. Former President Donald Trump continued his proposal on eliminating taxes on tips, overtime pay, and Social Security benefits. Trump criticized the Biden-Harris administration for harming senior citizens and emphasized his goal of rescuing the American middle class and restoring America's strength, health, safety, and freedom. And that Trump was here on Saturday, and vice presidential nominee and Senator J.D. Vance has 2 stops in the Charlotte area today. This evening at 5 p.m., he'll be at the Dale F. Halton Theater. That's on the campus of Central Piedmont Community College. Shortly after that, he will make his way to the Freedom House Church. That's near the I-85, I-485 interchange for an event that is slated for 6:30. You can find details on those events by visiting DonaldJTrump.com. And as we assess the current status of the 2024 presidential contest, at least here in the state of North Carolina, the most recent Carolina Journal poll out last week shows a razor-thin race here in the state, essentially a toss-up between former President Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. There was also discussion at the rally of another debate. The Kamala Harris campaign is asking for a debate on CNN. The former president said on Saturday in Wilmington that he would not, in fact, be taking place in another debate. He's already done 2. One with Crooked Joe and the other with Kamala Harris. That's going to do it for a Monday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We'll see you tomorrow morning, starting at 5.
You're clear, brother.